One of pop culture's biggest names is behind bars in New York City, and his connections are being scrutinized more than ever. Sean Diddy Combs wasn't just a leader in the music and business industries, he was well known in political circles as well. We're going to take a closer look at those relationships with the editor-in-chief for Mediaite.com, Aidan McLaughlin. Welcome to Sidebar, presented by Law&Crime. I'm Jesse Weber. So Sean Diddy Combs may be one of the top-selling musical artists of all time. I think we all know that, but his influence stretched far beyond just music. And now the spotlight is on who he threw his political support behind. Now we know that Combs was arrested last week in New York City. He was flown there in advance, apparently planning to turn himself in, but authorities arrested him at his Manhattan hotel, and after he was indicted on charges of racketeering conspiracy, sex trafficking, and transportation to engage in prostitution, there was a bond hearing that was held, two in fact, and both judges decided that Combs was a danger if he was allowed on bail, especially after allegations of witness tampering and bribery were made by the prosecution. So for now, Combs is in the Metropolitan Detention Center in Brooklyn. By the way, in the same part of the jail, we didn't know this, evidently, as convicted crypto fraudster Sam Bankman-Fried. Who would have thought that connection? But anyway, that's a separate topic. Okay, so now we want to talk about this. These connections between Combs and other high-profile people. They're being examined. Who knew what? Who may be a witness? Is the government talking with anyone? Is it possible that someone might be caught up in this? Could they face charges? These are questions that we have been asking. But right now, we're going to focus more specifically on Combs' political connections. All right, so to talk about all this, I want to bring in the editor-in-chief for Mediaite.com, Aidan McLaughlin. He is also the host of SiriusXM's show Press Club, which films in this room. So first, we haven't had a chance to really talk about the Diddy indictment, but the reaction and the news coverage of it, it's been everywhere. What has been your reaction to seeing what's happened?
Well, it's shocking. I mean, not just the nature of the allegations, but the extent of them. The fact that they have been going on allegedly for years, the breadth of the indictment. Clearly there were people within the music industry that knew about this. Cassie, obviously, who was a victim of Diddy's abuse. Rappers like Kid Cudi, who allegedly had his car blown up by Diddy. But the general public didn't know about that. And I have been following Diddy's career for years. I was a fan of his. He started Bad Boy Records in 1994. My first CD I ever bought was when I was 10 years old, the 10th anniversary CD of Bad Boy Records. So I have always been a fan of his, and it was pretty shocking to hear about this stuff.
By the way, I have been running around a lot covering this Sean Combs story, going into stores, getting gas. I'm all over the place. And I have with me this free app that can get me cash back on what I buy. It's awesome. It's called Upside, and they're a sponsor of Sidebar. So easy to use. Upside gets you real cash back, money that appears in your Upside app that you can transfer straight into your bank account. So just the other day, I used Upside to find a gas station. I claimed an offer, paid with my credit card at the pump, and then I followed the steps on the app to get cash back. And you can use Upside at all different kinds of places, restaurants, convenience stores. So to find out how much you could earn, click the link in the description to download Upside or scan the QR code on screen and use our promo code SIDEBAR, and you'll get an extra 25 cents back on every gallon on your first tank of gas. Hope you can check it out. I think a lot of people were shocked. I mean, not so much by this indictment, but when the Cassandra Ventura lawsuit came out, that's the first time I heard of a freak off and heard of these allegations, and we were expecting that charges might come. So there's a lot in that indictment that, didn't surprise me because we've been covering it for a year. But here's the interesting thing, the connections, right? So we know that Combs is often spotted in society circles, from music industry events to fashion shows to corporate meetups. But sometimes he is seen at political events, and Combs has shown public support for both Democratic and Republican candidates in the past. Support, though, has seemed to lean Democratic over the past few years, because back in the 90s, Sean Combs and not yet President of the United States yet, Donald Trump, they met. Both are from New York. They would apparently cross paths occasionally. Page 6 reported back in May that Trump was one of the celebrities featured in a video invitation to Combs' 29th birthday party in 1998. Aidan wasn't born yet, so that's totally fine. Page 6, though, reported in that video that Trump referred to Combs as the legendary Puff Daddy. And Trump also referred to Combs as a good guy during an episode of the reality TV show The Apprentice. Combs appeared to have kind of soured, though, on Trump by 2020 when he voiced his support for Joe Biden in the 2020 election. So Were you surprised to go back and see that connection between Trump and Diddy?
No, I was not surprised, because you got to remember that Donald Trump has been a fixture of the New York City social scene, of a certain kind of New York City social scene, for decades. Anyone that's from New York grew up, their parents talking to them about Donald Trump, reading about Donald Trump in the tabloids, seeing him in appearances as himself on Sex and the City, Home Alone. And so he was this real fixture of New York City high life. And so was Diddy. As I said, Diddy started his record label in 1994. He's from Westchester. He was a real part of New York City in the 1990s, and a real part of New York City wealth. And so I don't think it's any surprise that these are two people that spent a lot of time being seen out together at various events. And so, yeah, it wasn't particularly surprising. And obviously, there's a lot of photos of the two of them together. I think the most famous one that's been going around now is this photo of Diddy, who is being celebrated at an event at Mar-a-Lago, where there's a photo of him, Donald Trump, and Melania. And interestingly enough, that was an event thrown by Russell Simmons, who has his own problems to deal with, although he's fled to Bali and is dealing with them there.
Why did he sour on him? Why didn't he? Any idea why Combs didn't want to vote for Trump in 2020? Or?
That's a good question. I think there were a lot of people, a lot of rappers who were big fans of Donald Trump because he was this sort of epitome of wealth and flashiness, and he was this self-made billionaire, so the lore went. And so there were a lot of people that really liked him and thought he was a funny character in New York. And by the time he ran for office in 2016, his politics had obviously shifted a great deal. He was a lot more socially conservative, a lot more extreme, some people would say. And so a lot of people that previously found him to be an entertaining character and a figure and a friend turned on him. Mm-hmm. Diddy is one of those people. Obviously, Diddy has always supported Democrats, as Trump did when they were friends. So I think that's probably what led to their falling out politically, at least.
And that brings me to the next point, because Combs had crossed paths with Hillary Clinton, Barack Obama at various campaign events and interviews, especially those meant to appeal to younger voters. He also attended Obama's inauguration ceremony in 2009. What can you tell us about Combs' connection with the Democratic camp, these very big Democratic figures?
Yeah, so he's long supported Democrats very publicly. He's not just a rapper or record producer who gives money behind the scenes to Democrats. He had this big Get Out the Vote campaign in 2004 in support of Democrats, and then throughout the years he's supported Democrats. He's appeared with Barack Obama, Hillary Clinton, a number of prominent Democrats in the party. He's never, as far as I know, appeared with Kamala Harris, although she did thank him for hosting a COVID town hall in 2020. So yeah, he's always had these connections with Democratic politicians. As far as we know, though, he's never really had a friendship with any of them. Now, Trump actually said in an interview on The Apprentice that he considered Diddy to be a good friend. And what's interesting about that scene, because I went back and looked at it, is in that scene he's speaking with Aubrey O'Day, who's a member of Danity Kane, which is the band that Diddy created on his reality TV show. And Trump says that he loves Diddy, that he's a very good friend, and he says he's a good guy, right? And he tells Aubrey, and he says he's a good guy, right? And asks her if he's a good guy. And she declines to comment. Now, we later find out, she reveals in a podcast a couple years later, that one of the reasons she was fired from Danity Kane is because she didn't want to do certain things that didn't have to do with being in the band. So I think that in terms of the friendship, now, Trump being friends with someone like Diddy doesn't actually mean that they were friends, that they hung out together. It could just mean that he saw him at social events. But I think the relationship that Trump had with him was more social, whereas the relationship that someone like Hillary Clinton or Barack Obama had with him was a little bit more political, transactional.
And this brings me to a larger point, and I have to be clear about this. There is absolutely nothing in the indictment or the letters from the government from last week that indicates any of these people are somehow connected to what Combs is accused of doing. They're not even mentioned in any of the lawsuits as being a part of this. But why are we seeing this? Mostly on X, I think, but maybe Reddit. People are trying to make connections. Oh, he knew this person. He knew this person. They're worried. They're worried now. They're sweating. Like, what is going on? Why are people making these connections between the Combs criminal allegations and these high-profile political figures.
Right, yeah, and I think you make a good point there. There is no evidence that there was any connection in terms of what Combs was doing that was potentially illegal. And I think if there were, we would probably know about it at this point, although I don't know. But yeah, it's become, on social media, it's become a bit of a game that partisans on both sides of the aisle love posting pictures of their opponents in photos with Diddy. So you'll see partisans on Trump's side that will post photos of Barack Obama with Diddy, and partisans on the left side of the aisle that will post the Diddy and Trump photos to sort of smear their opponents as sexual deviants. There's no evidence of any of that, of any connection there. Trump himself actually posted a photo that showed Diddy with Kamala Harris. Turned out that it was a Photoshop picture of Diddy and it was Kamala Harris and Montel Williams. It was a fake photo. They had put Diddy's face on it. He deleted that photo, and it's also sort of a bizarre point to make, given there are photos of Trump with Diddy as well. So yeah, it's a silly smear. It reminds me of the Epstein case, when you had a lot of people on social media saying, oh, this goes all the way up to the top. We're going to get, the list is going to come out and it's going to show that all of these politicians and billionaires, have connections with Epstein that are criminal. That, in a lot of cases, didn't come into fruition. So, I think it's social media and the media should do a better job of trying to debunk this stuff.
Yeah, because everyone's like, oh, the tapes are going to come out. Wait and see who's on the tapes.
Remember the tapes?
But here's what's interesting. Well, I mean, with this now, and here's the thing. For me, looking at this, what I think is more significant is it goes to that idea, and it's a common theme put forward by prosecutors. It's also a common theme that you saw in the lawsuits, the power of Diddy, right? Look at his influence. Look at his power. Right. This is why a lot of these accusers didn't come forward initially. Think about his connections. That's what I take away from it more than anything. And when you're seeing these photos, and I forgot about the photos of him and Hillary Clinton and Donald Trump, that's what hits to me, is that power.
Well, that power, and also that there's been years of him being accused of being a bully and being terrifying. I mean, plenty of artists, Mace, who was a rapper in the 1990s, who was at the top of his game when he was signed to Diddy's label, left and became a pastor at the height of his career, and later said it's because he had to escape Diddy. He was terrified of him. So there have been years and years of allegations that Diddy is a bully and is terrifying and is physically abusive, and not to mention he has very powerful connections, as you say, and an enormous amount of money. And I think that's why, you haven't had these allegations come out until now, particularly when in 2017, when you had the Me Too movement, so much of this stuff had come out about people that were immensely powerful and that were able to keep their accusers silent for years. Harvey Weinstein is the best example of that. The fact that these allegations against Diddy didn't come out then and are only coming out now, I think is a testament to his power.
By the way, side note, Mace, amazing music. Miss it all the time. He was phenomenal.
Spectacular.
We could do a whole show on that. I listen to it all the time. I'm a little older than you. I was listening to it. So it was amazing. But anyway, back to this. So it wasn't just, though, presidential campaigns that Combs had been associated with over the years, because he crossed paths with former New York City Mayor Mike Bloomberg, current New York City Mayor Eric Adams. In fact, Adams gave Combs the key to the city last year for his contributions to New York, but the key was returned when allegations surfaced about Combs' behind-the-scenes behavior. That was a moment, right?
Yeah, having to return a key to the city is never a distinction that I want to have.
Because he is New York City in a way. You mentioned Combs.
Really is New York City, was really the face of it in terms of the music industry for years and years and years. And, with between the stuff he was doing in New York, in the social scene, the music scene, the white parties that he had out in the Hamptons, I mean, he really was a cultural touchstone in New York, and to have him fall like this is shocking.
Now, Combs has also been honored by various groups over the years for his philanthropic work. 2006, he was awarded a replica of the Liberty Bell by Mayor John Street of Philadelphia in honor, perhaps ironically, of his anti-violence efforts. 2012, Reverend Al Sharpton presented the Entertainment Award to Combs at the National Action Network's Triumph Awards in New York. But I want to go to this, because Combs worked with Rock the Vote in the early 2000s and even established his own voter education organization, Vote or Die, in 2004. Here's the thing, in our research for this episode, we found out something very interesting. I want to dig a little bit more into this more. In 2005, the Federal Election Commission announced that it was investigating a complaint made by Combs' involvement in the 2004 election. So Peter Flaherty, who is president of the National Legal and Policy Center, said that the way that Combs pushed to get people out to vote was in violation of both IRS and Federal Election Commission policies. So Citizen Change was the umbrella group over the Vote or Die campaign, and on its website, Citizen Change reportedly described itself as, quote, a nonpartisan, nonprofit organization with a mission to educate, motivate, empower millions of young Americans to access their power on November 2nd. But according to Flaherty, the problem came when Combs made his own political preference known. So Flaherty filed his complaint on November 3rd, 2005, and on the very first page, he states, quote, Sean Combs is the founder and CEO of Bad Boy Worldwide Entertainment Group, who undertook an illegal campaign during 2004 aimed at defeating President Bush in the presidential election of 2004. The complaint then cites a February 2004 Rolling Stone article about the 11th annual Rock the Vote Awards ceremony in Hollywood, and Combs is quoted as saying, we're going to get Bush's ass out of that office. The complaint also talks about the apparent luxury of the Vote or Die tour. There was the FEC complaint says, quote, an Associated Press article provides some clues as to the amounts of money spent by Citizen Change during the 2004 campaign. Tour transportation included a rented 52-seat 757 jet described as having one big first-class section and a motorcade of 5 SUVs and a party bus. Among the travelers was a petite Maltese named Sophie that resides in its own Louis Vuitton bag. Oh, imagine that. Now, Flaherty claims that this was all a gigantic PR stunt, not only for the Democratic Party, but for Bad Boy World Entertainment. And the complaint says, according to a Citizen Change press release, Citizen Change sought to create a sexy, fashionable t-shirt line with the Vote or Die slogan. Head designers at the Sean John clothing label will join with those at Echo, Fat Farm, Rockaware to create a line featuring distinct, hip interpretations of the campaign's message. So the commission does an investigation. They take a close look at the complaint, as well as the response from Citizen Change, and the Kerry Edwards campaign insisted it did not violate campaign rules. In the end, the commission wasn't able to find any evidence to substantiate Flaherty's claims, and they say in their ruling, all of the press releases and public statements issued by Citizen Change encouraged voter participation without expressly advocating the election of any particular federal candidate. That was a moment in time as well, right?
You remember those T-shirts?
I do remember those
You strike
T-shirts.
me as a Fat Farm wearer.
Thank you.
Let me just say, I'm glad that they beat the charges, because if you can't put a Maltese poodle in a Louis Vuitton bag,
What has this society become?
we're not American anymore.
No,
Our political system is over.
What do you think's behind your chair right now? People don't realize what Aidan came in with. That's what's so funny about this. But that was a big moment. I remember. And then he did it again in 2020.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, he was an active part of our politics, and I think, and for years. And what's so interesting about that is that a lot of these people, I think, that are accused of impropriety like this, take on political causes as a means of papering over potential illicit behavior behind the scenes. So it didn't surprise me at all when I remembered that Diddy was so involved in politics.
And look, we'll see where it goes. Right now, I think it's a lot of speculation, innuendo. There's no evidence to suggest there's more of a nefarious connection. But as we talked about, the fact that he had those connections says so much about the charges, this racketeering enterprise, this sex trafficking enterprise, the ability to do this, why people didn't come forward. Those are the allegations, and for me, I think that's the biggest takeaway. But Aidan McLaughlin, thank you so much for coming on. I hope everybody can check out Press Club on Sirius. What channel is it on Sirius?
POTUS channel.
POTUS channel. I hear that's a great channel.
The one and only.
I hear that's a great channel. Dan's on that channel. I fill in for Dan on that channel too. Little self-promotion. Aidan, so good seeing you. Thanks so much. Really appreciate it. All right, everybody. That's all we have for you right now here on Sidebar. Thank you so much for joining us. And as always, please subscribe on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube, wherever you get your podcasts. I'm Jesse Weber. I'll speak to you next time.